Good morning. Now we're cooking with gas. That may not be a thing for the near future. Cooking with gas. That'd be something, wouldn't it? Yeah. Good to be with you. Good to have you here. Beautiful day, Lord's Day. Let's begin by going to God in prayer. Our Lord and our God, we just praise you for being the one true God, for being the creator of all of life, the Savior of the world, the ruler who sits on his throne and has the world in his hands. And we're in awe when we think of your ways and your wonder and your wisdom, and especially the love that you have for us, enough to come to earth and give yourself so that we can have a relationship with you and have that relationship eternally. We can never repay that, but you've called us to shine your light and to tell others about that and represent you and your kingdom here on earth. Help us to do that. Strengthen those who need your physical healing and also your spiritual healing. And be with us this morning. Accept our praise and our worship and our offerings to you. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, continuing creation versus evolution. This is part of our series in defending the faith, Christian apologetics. And last time we talked about several areas of this question of which is true, creation or evolution? And what does the evidence show? What are the facts? Does it prove creation to be true, or does it prove evolution to be true? Or, as some might believe, does it prove both to be true? There are people who believe in God that also believe in evolution. So what does the evidence show? Beginning last time, we started with, of course, a natural place to start, which is, how did everything begin? Evolution claims the Big Bang Theory and how everything started from nothing and there was a Big Bang and this great expansion occurred, and then somehow everything began to kind of formulate itself into the solar systems and the galaxies and the planets and everything that we have today. And of course, our Earth as well. And, we've referenced this accumulation before of kind of just the astronomical chances of that happening and seeing the order that we have. And it's just not really a logical conclusion to come to. And creation then obviously makes the claim that God created everything, and we have that account in Genesis in the opening of the Scriptures. We read Psalm 33 where it tells us that God spoke and it was done. So, in the beginning, God said, and there's several places throughout the Bible that tell us exactly that. So, not only do we have evidence and reference of God speaking and God creating, but there's also, again, this component of order out of chaos and how we do have laws and order within our universe and what that then means and where did those come from and how could they have come from just a great Big Bang and an evolutionary process. I'd like to read, before we move on, I want to read Job chapter 38 and following. So turn over to Job 38 because, again, where did these laws and this order come from? Here in Job, if you're unfamiliar, we have one of the most heart-wrenching, accounts of somebody suffering severe loss in their life, loss in their finances, their wealth, their property, their livestock, their goods, but also their family members. God allows Satan to test Job and bring destruction upon him. God knows that Job will remain faithful to him. But so following that, in the opening chapters, what we have is Job, of course, naturally mourning, and then Job's friends come to him, and really they spend time with him, and then over a period of certain days, they eventually begin to speak up, and they start to, in a sense, judge Job and say, well, what is it that you did wrong? And then Job kind of gives some responses, but of course, Job's not happy. He's distraught. He doesn't even want to be alive anymore. He questions why he was even born, if this was going to happen to him. And God finally speaks up. Okay, God listened to all this. He's listened to Job's friends. He's listened to Job. And then now God's going to have a few words to say. Job chapter 38, beginning in verse 1. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, "Who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Now gird up your loins like a man, and I will ask you, and you instruct me. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding." Let's just pause right there for a second. So, what God just said there, where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Somebody equate that to what we're talking about here with kind of the beginning of everything. What would God say today to maybe some of the scientists and these evolutionists?
We really have no right to question anything because none of us were there when he created the heavens and the earth and all of everything.
Absolutely. Yeah, and so who are we to question and to... Now, I think there's one thing to ask questions and try to find the truth in the evidence, but to make claims against God and to try to pretend that we know better than God, and that's in a sense a little bit of what I think God was getting at with Job is, that kind of mindset. But we talked about this also with science. Okay, science. By definition, true science, right? Historical science is testable. It's observable. It's repeatable. There was when you were in school, elementary school, what is it that you learned about science? What was the process called of maybe coming to a truth with something? Maybe I'm not asking that. Huh? Hypothesis? Okay, what's another term for it? That's part of it. Huh? I heard it.
Theory.
Okay, theory. I think somebody said it. The scientific what? Method. Yeah, the scientific method. Maybe they don't teach that anymore, but I learned that. And so the scientific method, right? And so there is a hypothesis. That's where it begins. You have a hypothesis, and then you test it, and you repeat it, you observe it. I'm probably leaving something out of there, but okay, there is, so this process and this method, well, how can we do that with the Big Bang? How can we do that when we talk about the beginning of all things? Again, it's all speculation. It really is going out on faith. And there is, a lot to be said with regard to kind of how they got there. And there's so much circular reasoning. When you really start looking into it, this circular type of reasoning of going around and around, well, we're using this, and then we're using this to prove this, and so on and so on. So let's keep reading. Verse 5. Job 38:5. Who set its measurements, since you know? Or who stretched the line on it? On what were its bases sunk? Or who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy? Or who enclosed the sea with doors? When bursting forth, it went out from the womb. When I made a cloud its garment and thick darkness its swaddling band. And I placed boundaries on it and set a bolt and doors. And I said, thus far you shall come, but no farther, and here shall your proud waves stop. Have you ever in your life commanded the morning and caused the dawn to know its place, that it might take hold of the ends of the earth and the wicked be shaken out of it? It is changed like clay under the seal, and they stand forth like a garment. Verse 16, have you entered into the springs of the sea or walked in the recesses of the deep? Verse 19, where is the way to the dwelling of light and darkness? Where is its place, that you may take it to its territory and that you may discern the paths of its home? Verse 25, who has cleft a channel for the flood or a way for the thunderbolt to bring rain on a land without people or a desert without a man on it? Okay, we can keep going. In verse 31, he talks about, the solar system. Can you bind the chains of the Pleiades or loose the cords of Orion? Can you lead forth a constellation in its season and guide the bear with her satellites? Verse 1 of chapter 39. Do you know the time the mountain goats give birth? Do you observe the calving of the deer? Can you count the moths they fulfill? Or do you know the time they give birth? Okay, so really this broad questions of God of saying, can you answer these questions? Do you know? And there's so much that we don't know. Okay, and the smartest people in our world, again, they don't have answers to these questions, right? It's instincts. And if you ever watch some of those Discovery Channel shows, creation and the animal world is incredible. And some of these, the migrations and the way these mating calls and different things like that, it's remarkable. Okay, so notice now, okay, and I encourage you to read that for yourself, but chapter 40, Job's going to respond. Then the Lord said to Job, will the fault finder contend with the Almighty? Let him who reproves God answer it. Then Job answered the Lord and said, behold, I am insignificant. What can I reply to you? I lay my hand on my mouth. Once I have spoken, and I will not answer, even twice, and I will add nothing more. Job realized that I don't know those things. Only you know, God, because you were there. And again, we tie all this back into the only logical possibility is for a eternal supreme being that exists outside of time and space and matter to be able to create time, space, matter, order, laws, everything that we see. Okay, again, God, verse 6, the Lord answered Job out of the storm. God wasn't done yet. He wanted to make sure he got his point across. And I encourage you to read it some more. But the point is that we can't test these things, and they're not repeatable. There's a lot of faith involved in, well, we have to just accept that these billions of years ago, this happened. And out of nothing, order came. And out of chaos, we have laws and natural order. Okay? Or the other possibility is God. In the beginning, God. The eternal being created time, space, and matter, and brought about his creation, his laws, his order, and everything that we see. Any statements or comments about that? Anything that stood out to you in what we read there in Job? Or
I think it shows you that God had faith or belief in Job because he knew that Job would not turn against him at all. But it shows you that even he got discouraged and he needed a little kick in the butt to say, hey, you aren't perfect, things do happen, and I'm here for you, just, let's pull that over. But it shows you that, even God had faith in Job, so, he's got faith in us. It's just, we take that opportunity to do that.
that's a very good point. And, I think, and two, Job suffered an unbelievable tragedy in his life. And And we will touch on that, and it's a fair question of why does God allow bad things to happen to good people? And why is there so much evil in the world? And that is a reason why so many people either first don't believe in God to begin with, or two, they lose their faith over time. And we'll get, I think, a little bit into that later, but that's why I think God's not going to speak to us as he did Job, certainly, okay? But he has spoken to us in his word, and we have that. I think we have the account of Job because of that. And as some of the other studies we've already done, God has spoken to us and given his evidence in his creation. The fact that there is laws and there is order and there is creation shows evidence of God. And Ecclesiastes 3, God has put his his presence and eternity inside of us and inside of our hearts. And so we know deep down, everybody knows that there is something greater than us. So how will we hold up? And in this world where there's ever, more pressure to reject God and accept naturalist theories and beliefs, and in a lot of ways, it has become a religion in and of itself. And if you don't accept it, you're an outcast. So much of the scientific world. So, Wes?
I was just going to say a little different slant, not to go too far afield here, but when we read Genesis 1:1, God created, we take that and we go from there. But for me, the 38:39, especially 38, speaks to me, we talk about Job, that chapter, is on the days where I think I'm pretty smart, or I think I got the world by the tail and all that, I just take a read on that. And he doesn't say that to us today, but he said it to Job. So I put my name there. And real quick, it humbles you.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it's a good governor on keeping us in line sometimes to read that chapter 136.
No question. Yeah. No, it's applicable to all of us. Again, none of us were there, and we can either accept what God has said or not. So, moving on. Okay, number 2 is human design. Okay, and evolution would and does demand a progression of minor gradations. Okay, natural selection, the survival of the fittest, where microorganisms evolved into more complex life. Fish to amphibians, and amphibians to reptiles, reptiles to mammals, and reptiles to birds, apes to humans. So, what is survival of the fittest? Somebody define that. Survival of the fittest. Natural selection. The strongest will survive.
Those that have figured out how to adapt to their environment.
Okay, yeah, adapt or evolve, right? So yeah, but there is a component of the strongest, and right, they overcome their environment and their predators, and so thus then they're the ones that evolve, and the claim is, okay, we look the way we do, and so does everything else because of natural selection. Let's think about this. Okay. What are some conclusions we have to come to if natural selection is true regarding human beings, and not necessarily just how we got here, but I don't know. Let me ask it a different way. What would you say is the most intelligent and strongest or impressive animal in the world? We are. Okay, Alice, you said humans. Why humans?
Because we can think.
Because we can think. Okay? Now, there's dolphins around here. Our dolphins have an amazing ability to think and communicate and use sonar and different things like that. Are humans the biggest? Are they the fastest? Are they the strongest? Or can they jump the highest? Can they climb the highest and the fastest? Can they, do all sorts of other things that, again, can they live underwater? You think, again, so these are some logical questions and conclusions to think about. If our environment, the world we live in, Earth, is, 70+% made up of water? If we are the most advanced animal, why can't we live underwater? Why can't we breathe underwater? Why can't we swim for, hours and hours underwater and, at 30, 40 miles an hour? Why can't we fly? You would think, right? It'd be amazing to be able to fly. And there's tremendous advantages to being able to fly. And again, thinking about overcoming your predators. Flight has tremendous value and benefits to it. So and again, the claim is that the humans are, the top of the food chain, so to speak. Now perhaps they would make the claim that it is because we do use our brains in a different way, and we organize and we build communities and different things like that, but so too do all sorts of other animals. A couple weeks ago, Josh and I were doing frisbee golf, and we came across some giant ant hills, and we began talking about that. You ever seen video or footage of an ant community under the ground? That system that they build? It's amazing. There's, all sorts of tunnels and connections, and how do these little ants build this? Davis often talks about bees and just how unbelievable their work is, and their connection and their intelligence and the things that they do, and the different types of bees that have different responsibilities and things, and so on and so on. And so, again, natural selection, you would think that we would all have these abilities to be able to do these things if humans were the supreme evolved animal. Wolfgang?
You know that I love dogs.
Unless they bite you.
I think the world of dogs. I rescue dogs to praise all my whole life. And evolution went away from me totally the day that I discovered the scientists that say pigs are smarter than dogs. It just doesn't. That's just
Pigs are smarter than dogs. Yeah, I've heard pigs are actually cleaner than humans. I've heard that too. Yeah. Nadia?
Humans can use tools to fly.
Okay.
Be underwater.
Yeah.
That's not good for us.
It's a good point. So, yeah, we've been able to build those things, and that kind of goes back to what Alice was saying, right? We can think and we can come up with ways, but we're copying nature, right? So it's not a natural progression of gradations. We're mimicking the things we see around us, and so the question is, where does that come from, Steve?
Yeah, no, I was actually going exactly down that road. It's like we see a dolphin, we see sonar, and we go, hey, you know what? I'm going to build a submarine. The submarine's going to use sonar to do that thing. There's nothing else on this planet. Like, a dolphin's not going to look at us and go, you know what? I'm going to grow legs. I'm going to walk on land now and accomplish it. This
Yeah.
doesn't work that way.
Yeah, very good. That's right. And so, and I think that is what sets us apart. And so it goes then again back to where does that come from? And what is it then that sets us apart? Yes, we're made in God's image. We have an eternal component to us. We have a soul. But God has given us, right? If you go back to Genesis, God has put man over all of creation, to rule it. And Adam named all the animals, and so on and so on. And so it's God put man over everything in the world.
Something that added to different comments is that of all the newborns, a human newborn is the most helpless when they're born.
Yeah, No, that's a very good point. Yeah, I think it was a giraffe a few days ago on some program or something, and it was immediately, like within a few hours, it was up and walking around, and I mean, it's incredible. But yeah, so you would think, right, if we've evolved, well, why does it take so long for humans to reach adult size? So that's a very good point. Anybody else? Steve?
Might be a little on that first picture you have up there, the progression, I guess, of evolution, you know, like the little ape, all the way up to a man. I remember in high school, what little I can remember from high school. We always saw in science progression of a horse, little thing all the way up. But then I read a book by Professor Barrett Baxter one time. They found evidence of the ones that are there now, the ones and horses in the very beginning, as they say the beginning was, but no evidence of anything of it in between. There was just a hypothesis, you know, what based on science really, what based on truth.
Yeah, no, that's a great observation. So he's talking about, okay, the evidence of in between, and so that a little bit connected with the idea of the missing link, and we're going to touch on that in just a second because that's very important. But when we think about, okay, creation again versus evolution, and okay, the claims of both, right? We talked about last time the human body and its amazing components and features and systems. Okay, of course, creation, God said, "Let us make man in our image." Genesis 1:26 and 27. God made man from the dust, made woman from the man. Okay, every bit of us is designed by God. Psalm 139 is a beautiful description of kind of how that happens. Okay, God, in other places too, God forms us in the womb. We're fearfully and wonderfully made. Okay, purposefully we're made by God as well to fulfill a specific purpose. We've talked about the billions of cells contained in the body. Wayne Jackson gives 4 levels of organization within the human body: cells, tissues, organs, and systems. Okay, the cells, the smallest unit of life. The tissues are the group of same kind of cells, different kinds of tissues. Organs, a group of different tissues, all working in unison. And then systems are it's groups of organs performing special functions. We talked recently too about all the different systems. Some of them are up there. I know they're tough to see, but every component of the body is, again, fearfully and wonderfully made, and it's a design for a specific purpose, and it's obviously evidence of a creator. The DNA, anybody have any knowledge of how many strands of DNA are contained in the human body? Or how long they would be? Maybe you've heard that before. I don't know how they've actually measured this. Obviously they couldn't, but extrapolation. But the claim is that adult strands of DNA laid out end to end would reach the sun and back 400 times. 186 million miles. That's DNA strands within your body. Again, certainly that's not something that's testable, but based on what they can observe, I guess extrapolation. But so let's move on to a little bit what Steve was talking about and the fossil evidence. Okay, fossil evidence, because this is crucial. When we talk about evolution, what is the fossil evidence? Okay, the claim is that the fossil evidence proves that evolution is true and accurate. The extinction. Okay, so what is the claim connecting it with extinction and what they have found within the fossil evidence? What do you think?
They talk about the different periods of the fossils, so as you go down, there's different levels of which period the fossils in. But that's also been disproven because, like, the period from dinosaurs has been found in different periods, and other periods that are up top in the mountain in the lower periods, so they can't really base that on anything. But those are the different fossil layers.
Yeah, good point, okay, because they claim that, the different levels represent different time periods, but they have found, and vice versa too, right? Things that are supposed to be in a shorter time period in the same fossil or, clay or whatever with others. So I appreciate that. I didn't see you back there, Holly. Nadia?
They also claim to have found skulls of apes or humans that are slightly different. It's evolved to the modern man's skull.
Okay, yeah. Different types of skulls, anything about Lucy, but what about just extinction? Okay, why are things extinct? And how does that then relate to evolution? When did it happen? Okay. The claim is that extinction proves natural selection. Why? Why would extinction prove natural selection?
Supposedly because the fossil evidence shows that a certain species or animal or whatever it was existed at a certain time period. It's no longer here. We no longer see them living. So whatever traits that fossil had didn't allow it to continue to survive. So
Yeah, right, survival of the fittest. It wasn't able to survive. And so natural selection pushed it out. And think about some ones that come to note, the dodo bird, the woolly mammoth. I recently heard they're attempting to reintroduce these into the world through kind of like the Jurassic Park method. They're taking so-called DNA or genes that they've gotten from those, and they're kind of mixing them with similar type of animals. But nonetheless, okay, so why did those animals go extinct? And they claim that, well, as Matt pointed out, it proves evolution because they weren't able to survive.
One of the fundamental things that when we throws out the whole fossil thing out the window is because everything is based on science's ability to measure. And to measure time, they have to count atoms and structure and things like that. Go with carbon-14 dating the whole bit, back. Every time they jump 1,000 years or 10,000 years or 100,000 years, they get more and more wrong. So the answer close up is fairly correct. But when the answer gets to be 100,000 years old or 200,000 or 1,000,000 years old, as some of them claim, it's totally wrong because the measurement is just a guess.
Yeah, that's right. So again, there's no way to be able to go back there. And there is, and let's, I guess, make a distinction, okay, between macroevolution and microevolution, okay? There are certain, no question, right, that animals and parts of creation do adapt to their environment, okay? And they can develop certain traits to survive within their environment, okay? So what's the difference between that and macroevolution? Because that would be the claim that evolutionists would say is, so animals don't adapt to their environment at all. That's what you're claiming as a creationist. So what's the difference? Callie, you want to take a shot?
I feel like microevolution would be defined as like small, and macro would be defined as like bigger, because that's how we grew up in high school. That's how we
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so micro being kind of small gradations versus macroevolution, this a giant evolution they're in. Was there another hand over here? Okay, what would be the major difference though?
in The change of species.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, so again, from amphibians to reptiles, reptiles to mammals, or, right, and so on and so on. And so an animal, a species, changing into and evolving into a different species. Okay, that's macroevolution. So that is different than a specific species developing traits to benefit itself, and over time, but they're not. A turtle is always going to be a turtle. A bird is always going to be a bird, and so on and so on. So that's the key difference. Okay, and so touching on what Steve was saying, what is the missing link? Where is the missing link? And one of the missing links that they're always looking for, okay, Darwin's sketch from the origin of species for a common ancestor is, again, does the fossil record match the theory? The theory is that there should be a great accumulation of missing links. And what I find interesting, and I think this is singular, is that they're always looking for that one missing link, right, between apes and man. Again, mentioned Lucy. Like, claim is that, well, Lucy is perhaps that missing link. But as Steve mentioned, and this is something that eventually struck me as I was growing in my understanding and maturation of accepting God and realizing the fallacies within evolution, is that if evolution is true, there shouldn't be just one missing link between apes and humans. Just in that of itself, there should be thousands and thousands and thousands of missing links between apes and humans. But not only that, but there should be missing links and evidence within the fossil evidence of all of these progressions from every single animal that has evolved into another species. There should be fossil evidence of that everywhere, all over the earth, from amphibians to reptiles and so on and so on. Okay? Not only would it be within the fossil evidence, but where else would we also see such a reality? Maybe that's not a good way to ask it. It would be within our current world, wouldn't it? Not just fossil evidence, but there should be creatures all around us that are, hybrids of, this species and that species, of apes and humans, of, birds and reptiles. And so they should be everywhere, all around us. Millions of them, right? Because if evolution is true, then, and they say, well, it's taken place over, billions of years. But why has it stopped? And they say, well, it just takes a lot of time. And we will see eventually humans will evolve. Well, why have humans stopped evolving? And they say, well, we haven't. It just takes so long that you just don't see it within our current time frame. Well, okay, but we should still see apes evolving into humans, shouldn't we? Why has that stopped? Any thoughts on that?
We talk about adapting and changing and extending. I watch sometimes the Animal Channel, that kind of thing. So we have, this last week, there was a special on wolves in different parts of the world. But all those wolves have adapted, some to desert life, some to where one of them doesn't even drink, he gets his water from the food that he eats. But they're still wolves, okay? So if apes are evolving into man, how come they're still apes? I mean, we're men, they're apes. Now, apes in a different part of the world, back to different humans in a different part of the world. I'd have a hard time in the Andes. My lungs aren't adapted to that height.
Yeah.
But we're still men and women. I don't understand. How does that too simple?
Yeah, so what is then the answer from creation, from the Bible? What does it say? Go back to Genesis. Georgina?
God created the heaven and earth and everything in it.
Okay, and then what about all the animals?
Animals too.
Each in their own kind, right? So that's the answer. Okay, and Darwin's claim, okay, is that the number, if it millions of years old, the number of intermediate and transitional links between all and extinct species must have been inconceivably great. Okay, and that was, roughly a couple of centuries ago, and so in his mind, well, we just haven't, we've just begun to search and discover all this stuff, and so surely we will begin to see all these transitional links that are all around us. But again, they're just not there. They're just not there. I think we touched on the Cambrian explosion. Yes, sir.
View of the animals and kind of we should see hybrid things. We actually do. We've got lions and tigers that can breed. They never breed outside species. We've got donkeys and horses that breed. Crazy thing is, every time we have hybrid breeding, and actually Trey and I just taught a class on this with the teens. Every time we breed any two species together, if they can be bred, almost all outcomes of that end up sterile. They can't reproduce beyond that, or they end up with severe deformities and issues that, like the liger, for example, between the lion and the tiger, usually end up with gigantism, and their own organs can't support their body, and they die these early deaths. So even when you do have these things that are sort of close species that are able to hybridize, they don't go further, which is an observable thing happening now. If you try to do across species as they propose would happen, you don't end up with better. It's not evolution, it's de-evolution. It's going the opposite direction. And the other thing is with people. The natural thought would be, if we are the pinnacle of evolution, and we're just going to continue to evolve better and better and better and better, think about where we are right now. The observable science doesn't say we're getting better. As a matter of fact, we prolong our lives artificially, which I'm glad we do. I'm glad we have the science. I'm glad we have the ability to study the human body that God made and to prolong our lives. But really think about it. We're not in any way supporting anything having to do with evolution. Think about how many people in this room alone would be dead were it not for insulin shots, antibiotics, these things that we do that artificially prolong life. For survival of the fittest would say, if those were to die off, the ones that survive would be stronger and we would continue to progress. But everything indicates it's going the other way. We're running down. We're becoming more prone to problems. We're becoming more prone to infections and not surviving as long.
Yeah, no, very good observations. And it's devolution, and even just from a societal standpoint, not just a physical standpoint, right? You would think that our society would be getting more productive and better and things like that, and we're seeing the opposite. And we talked about this. I think we're removing God from the picture, and I think when we try to play God, and obviously Jurassic Park is proof that when you do that, things go bad. So it's not going to work, right? And there's a reason for that. We're not God, as God showed Job. We got about a minute or so here. But again, okay, Genesis. And so creation is each in its own kind. Birds produce birds. Fish produce fish. Reptiles will always be reptiles. And as Steve pointed out, okay, this is why species can't procreate with other species. We'll pick up here next time, and we'll start with dinosaurs and get to a little bit of what Holly was talking about and evidence, okay, and are dinosaurs 65 plus million years old, or is there evidence that shows that they lived with humans and are part of God's 6-day creation? So appreciate all your participation.